Welcome back. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the case of David Parker Ray, the toy box killer. This one is pretty disturbing. We're going to try to understand what made this guy tick, how he operated, and the chilling details of his crimes. You probably already know the basics about David Parker Ray, but we're going beyond the surface here. We're going to explore the psychological depths of this case. Maybe we can find some new insights, even if you already know the story. So let's start with his early life. Ray was born in 1939, and his childhood was anything but normal. Imagine growing up in a home filled with abuse and neglect and exposed to sadomasochistic material at a young age. It's pretty grim. This begs the question, how much did these early experiences shape him into the monster he became? Was this nature versus nurture? Did the trauma he endured plant the seeds for his later sadistic tendencies? Now fast forward to his adulthood. Ray lived in Elephant Butte, New Mexico, and worked as a mechanic. To the outside world, he seemed ordinary, but behind this facade, he was living a double life. And it was a horrifyingly dark one. Ray created a torture chamber in a soundproof trailer.
He called it his toy box, a name as chilling as the space itself. And it wasn't just a random collection of tools. This was a carefully planned space, designed for one purpose: to inflict pain and terror. Gynecological tables, pulleys, leg spreader bars, even a mirror on the ceiling, so victims were forced to watch their own suffering. It's the stuff of nightmares. But the truly disturbing part is that Ray handcrafted many of these devices himself. This wasn't just about using pre-existing tools of torture. This is about designing and creating instruments specifically for his own twisted purposes. He even pre-recorded instructions and warnings for his victims, describing in detail the pain they were about to endure. Can you imagine the psychological impact of waking up in that trailer drugged and restrained with those words echoing around you? Ray's victims were often vulnerable women. He targeted sex workers, believing they wouldn't be missed, making them easy prey for his twisted games. He used different methods to lure them in, sometimes feigning friendship, other times resorting to drugs. Once inside the toy box, the real horror would begin. Ray would drug his victims with barbiturates, keeping them disoriented and submissive, while he tortured and assaulted them for hours, sometimes even days. And to make matters even worse, he documented it all. Photographs, videotapes, detailed diaries, a chilling record of his crimes. Almost like he wanted to relive those moments of power and control over and over again. But Ray wasn't alone in this darkness. His girlfriend Cindy Hendy was an active participant, helping him capture and subdue victims. It's hard to comprehend how someone could be complicit in such acts, driven by either a shared sadism or a disturbing level of obedience. And then there's his own daughter Jessie. She was implicated too. Admitting she knew about the toy box and her father's activities, the question of how a daughter could be involved in such a horrific scenario is a complex one, riddled with potential psychological factors and familial dynamics that are difficult to grasp. This ripple effect of evil extending beyond the perpetrator himself adds another layer of unsettling complexity to this already disturbing case. But in March of 1999, a glimmer of hope pierced the darkness. Cynthia Vigil, one of Ray's victims, managed to escape. After enduring days of unimaginable torture, she found a moment of opportunity when Ray left her unattended. Think about the strength and courage it took for her to unlock her restraints, escape the trailer half naked and injured, and find help from neighbors. It's a story of incredible bravery in the face of unimaginable horror. Her escape was a turning point. It was the crack in Ray's carefully constructed facade that ultimately led to his downfall. The subsequent investigation uncovered a trove of evidence inside the toy box. The torture devices, the diaries, the photographs, the audio-video recordings. It was a horrifying testament to the scope of his crimes. And yet, despite the overwhelming evidence of torture, one chilling question remained. Where were the bodies? Authorities suspected Ray had murdered many of his victims, but with no bodies, it was really hard to connect it to specific murders. The estimates are chilling, maybe 14 to 60 or more women. And that's just a guess. Ray lived in a pretty remote area in New Mexico. He had access to different properties out in the middle of nowhere, so searching for burial sites was almost impossible. This lack of closure makes this case even more tragic. Families are left wondering, forever haunted by the possibility that their loved ones were among Ray's victims. And then there's the trial. It captivated the nation, but it never really reached a conclusion. He was convicted on multiple charges: kidnapping, torture, assault. But before he could really face justice, fate intervened. In 2002, just 3 years after his arrest, David Parker Ray died of a heart attack in prison, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and a trail of devastation that continues to this day. The case of the toy box killer is a haunting reminder. It shows us that darkness can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truths about the nature of evil and the vulnerability of those who exist on the fringes of society. But amidst the horror, There's also a story of resilience. Cynthia Vigil, the woman who escaped the toy box, became a symbol of hope. Her escape wasn't just a personal victory. It was a pivotal moment in the case. It led to Ray's arrest and the exposure of his crimes. Vigil's testimony, along with that of other survivors, was crucial in securing Ray's conviction. These women who would endure the worst of humanity found the strength to confront their abuser and ensure that some semblance of justice was served. Their bravery reminds us that even in the darkest of circumstances, the human spirit can triumph. The case of David Parker Ray also raises questions about the role of childhood trauma in shaping criminal behavior. We can never excuse or minimize his actions, but understanding the potential impact of his abusive upbringing might offer some insight into the factors that contributed to his descent into depravity. It underscores the importance of addressing childhood trauma and providing support for those who have experienced abuse, not only for their own well-being, but also as a potential preventative measure against future violence. Ray's meticulous planning and the sophisticated nature of his operation also highlight the chilling reality of predatory behavior. He didn't just stumble into his crimes. He actively sought out vulnerable individuals, carefully selecting his victims, and meticulously crafting his methods of control and torture. This level of premeditation speaks to a deeply disturbed psyche, one driven by a compulsion to exert power and inflict suffering. This case serves as a stark reminder. We need to be vigilant and aware. We need to be able to recognize the red flags of predatory behavior and take steps to protect ourselves and those around us. David Parker Ray's crimes left an indelible mark on Elephant Butte, Mexico. The toy box itself became a symbol of horror, a tangible reminder of the darkness that had invaded their community. The psychological impact on the residents was profound. It shattered their sense of safety and security. But this case also exposed systemic issues. It raised questions about law enforcement's response to missing persons reports, particularly those involving sex workers, who are often marginalized and overlooked. Ray's ability to operate undetected for so long underscores the need for greater sensitivity and attention to vulnerable populations. We need to ensure that their cases are taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. The toy box killer case is a stark reminder of the evil that can exist in the world, but it's also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of fighting for justice even in the face of unimaginable darkness. The echoes of Ray's crimes continue to reverberate, urging us to confront uncomfortable truths, learn from the past, and work towards creating a safer and more compassionate society. This toy box killer case, it's more than just another true crime story. It raises questions about good and evil, the effects of trauma, and how predators take advantage of people. We've looked at the facts and explored the psychology of this case, and confronted some really unsettling truths. But there's something else we need to consider, and it's probably the most important thing of all: the lasting impact on Elephant Butte, New Mexico. Imagine living in a place where something this horrible happened, where someone you thought you knew turned out to be a monster. It really makes you question who you can trust, even your neighbors. The toy box itself became a symbol of this horror, a reminder of the darkness that had taken over their lives. How could they ever feel safe again, knowing that something this evil was right there in their town? But the case also showed that the system failed. Ray was able to operate for so long without being caught, and the police didn't really do enough to help missing persons, especially when it came to sex workers, who were often ignored and forgotten. Ray's case is a stark reminder that we need to be more sensitive to vulnerable populations. We need to make sure their cases are taken seriously and investigated properly. This deep dive into the toy box killer case has taken us to a dark place. We've seen the worst of humanity, but we've also seen some glimmers of hope. Cynthia Vigil's escape, the courage of the survivors who testified, the community trying to heal and rebuild. All of this shows us the strength of the human spirit, the belief in justice, and the capacity for compassion. The case of David Parker Ray is a chilling reminder. We need to be vigilant, recognize the signs, and speak out against injustice. We have to make society safer and more equitable so that this kind of horror never happens again. This deep dive is over, but we need to keep talking about these things.